Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 6 of Beyond Room 313 Symposium. As you can see, I have a fashionable Costa del Paddy tan today, nice and pink from being out in the sun. And today we have another female guest, a lady whose work quite impressed me a while ago when I first came across it. The way I look at things in alternative spirituality, outside paganism stuff, there's the New Age, and then there's the Beyond the New Age, where the New Age tends to be a little bit fluffy, infantile, love and light. There's a sort of a stage beyond that where it's a little harder, a little deeper. Things like shadow work has great emphasis on it. And I hope I'm not insulting Shonagh by saying that I see her very much in that sort of like beyond one, a bit more harder, a bit more authentic, and a bit more gritty in terms of how you deal with your own spiritual development. So Shonagh is an on-band-3, which is basically an Irish word for a wise woman or that kind of thing. And she's an Irish American. I met her a few years ago, and she's familiar with like the ancient sites and the culture of Ireland as well. She's done some tremendous work on the use of the mushroom in psilocybin in terms of exploring one's altered states of consciousness. And so I think it's going to be a fantastic talk here tonight. And welcome, Shonagh, to the Symposium on Beyond Room 313.
Thank you so much, Thomas. It's so good to be connected with you again. So I was saying earlier, I took myself off all of social media, and I miss you terribly because I used to tune into your posts all the time.
Well, I get banned so much now, so it's probably kind of pointless. They banned me for someone. I've said I get banned for things like saying, "Oh, suggest a good horror movie," and I'm banned. I just can't get. It's just hilarious actually at this stage. But you're probably right too as well. Probably a lot healthier. So the question I always like to ask someone like you is, what brought you to this point in your spiritual development where you had to become the person you are being presented on this program, in terms of who you are and the work you do?
Let's see. Really, ultimately, I would say it is the mushroom. I work with the mushroom. And so I've apprenticed myself to those teachers. And so I'm 58. I'm in my 10th year of apprenticeship. And I will forever be an apprentice to those teachers. I'm not a master of that by any stretch, but I probably, 8 years before that, my marriage fell apart and my whole life fell apart. And that I call it the midlife face slap. And that set me on a course of deeper questioning. And I found my way to a man who was to be my teacher for this lifetime, Dr. Brew Joy, who was a Johns Hopkins trained MD who walked away from a very illustrious career to teach, and he was very Jungian. And I had just 3 years with him, very in-depth. And his teachings are really the foundation of my work. And speaking of shadow, this was a great focus of his. A lot of dream work and shadow projection. And all of that was new to me. I knew who Jung was, but I was very unfamiliar with all of that. And I remember Brew had a following, a lot of psychotherapists and doctor types. And I remember asking a psychotherapist, what's shadow? And what's projection? Like, I don't get it. Like, can you explain that? And that was all those years ago. And so for my entire 40s, I was I still am a voracious student of the mystery, but I was seeking out teachers, and I did a lot of exploration. And then at 48, I found my way to the mushroom, and everything, absolutely everything changed as a result. So I have written about it, and that would bring us to this moment for sure.
So the mushroom's the key sort of almost sacrament in your development, I guess, in a way. I think we've all got something like that. For me, it was like the shadow work was it seemed to be integral to any kind of spiritual development. And when I went out there, I was always amazed by how many people were like, what's that? Why should I do that? Why should I look at the badness in me? Why should I look at the faults in me? Why should I look at the darkness that's impacted upon me? and it still goes on. You look at, you talk to some people in the kind of more new agey elements of things. There's almost like a narcissism, like, well, I don't have a shadow. No, I don't, and I'm like, in many ways, your spirituality is your shadow. It is the hurt. It is the pain. It is the darkness. And I find they have a lot of difficulty coming to grasp with that. And it's often as a result of a crisis, like you said, in your own life, your marriage falling apart. It's almost like that in its at the time, it's horrible. It's like an illness can be the same way. But looking back on it, you realize that was your step into consciousness. It was almost like the universe was saying, okay, enough of that. Now we go this way. Is that how you feel?
Absolutely. And, Brew, my teacher, once said, crisis awakens. And he said, the dark well serves. And we, especially, I think, when one is exploring at this depth, you can't be in preference. I really feel that we have to hold the beautiful and the terrible and everything in between. And that is within us as well as out there in the collective. And I think part of the reason, why the world tends to kind of fall prey to all kinds of nonsense is because people have not done that shadow work within themselves. There's a naivete or even kind of infantilized mindset that doesn't want to think that exists, that level of darkness, and certainly not within themselves.
It's funny, the reflection of things, because before you came on, I was going to say that, well, I really got much experience with the mushroom, and then I started thinking back at my life, and I realized I've done enormous amounts of psychedelics. So, since just forgetting that you were also often in a recreational form when I was younger. But I've macro dosed, mega dosed on mushrooms several times, and literally it was to try and blast myself into another reality. I was deliberately trying it for that reason. What was that you're going to say, Jason? You're going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say when you were done there, yeah, that similar experience. We're talking about shadow work and everything. And, having come out of the military about 5 years ago, it was definitely, microdosing was definitely a helpful thing to help me kind of reintegrate or recalibrate my own perceptions to help me handle some of that shadow work. It's like, Thomas, you're a musician too, and you get, like, when you're doing a sound check, you have to, like, adjust levels on things. And it was kind of like that microdosing helped me go, oh, okay, I've got the gain set too high on this part of my life and not set high enough on this part. And it just, all those perceptions, recalibrating them in the way you'd recalibrate your pedal board if you had a new guitar or a new amp or something. And then, being able to go, okay, now it's time I actually start delving in now that I've got, like, my physical considerations taken care of a little bit.
And then you kind of hung up the telephone once you got the message.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just that.
Yeah. That happened to me in a different way, Shonagh. I took an enormous amount of psilocybin mushrooms that I got off the mountains here, literally with the objective of, like, smashing through the veil to the other side. And you know what? I did it. I absolutely did it. Now, I had all the other previous experiences of seeing, like, gray aliens and all the usual things and all the things that people do see. One particular trip was absolutely staggering in terms of the visuals that I received. And it literally basically found myself at the center of the universe in the presence of an enormous Hindu god made of millions of eyes. And it was just like one of those moments. When I came out of it, that was 9 years ago, I said, I've no reason to do this anymore. I'm done, because I got what I wanted. Now, whereas someone who has, say, a depression or something, they might provide us constantly to help with that. I understand that. What about your experiences with them? Tell us, Shonagh, about your experiences with the mushrooms. Anything really?
Well, okay. So I was seeking deeply in my 40s, and at some point, I remember hearing about ayahuasca, and so I was curious and found through word of mouth an avenue to that experience, and tried it a couple of times, and it was very powerful, but I got very strongly, this is not your medicine. And I call it medicine. Some people call it a sacrament, whatever. I call it medicine because it's changed my life. It's helped me greatly. And I've spoken to a number of people who feel the same way. In any case, yeah, it wasn't my medicine. And yeah, it didn't feel right for me personally. And so at that time, then the mushroom was calling, and I had a good friend I knew and trusted, and he had land up in the rainforest area of the state of Washington. And so he invited me up there to have an experience out in the forest and to try the mushroom for the first time. And so we did that, and we followed Terence McKenna's directive, and we did 5 dried grams lying down in silent darkness in the forest. It was, and it was extraordinary. And it was also, I had a very potent healing where the earth opened and spoke to me, and I was not expecting that. And I was so moved and so just, I just couldn't even believe what happened. And so when I got out of that, I realized this is a portal. This is a portal. And this is a teacher, and this is ancient. And I don't care who says what about it. I don't think we really get what exactly this is. We are a mystery, and we are part of a living mystery. And so I had to do it again. And so I contacted my friend to see if I could come up the next month. And then what ended up happening, though I didn't plan it, was I went for a year of monthly mushroom journeys at high doses, mostly done outside at night in the forest. And I like to joke that there aren't too many middle-aged ladies in the suburbs going out in the forest and eating 5 grams of mushrooms, but I was. And it was cumulative. And that first year, it was cumulative in that I began channeling, and I am a medium. And also was bringing up all my unhealed stuff. And in the middle of that year, I ended up in a dark night of the soul. Yeah. And it was, I mean, it was absolutely life-changing. Now, fortunately, I'm not a medicator. So I thank God I didn't turn to, it wouldn't occur to me anyway. So I didn't take any medication for it. In my mind, I was just like, oh my God, I got to get through this. How do I do this? You know, but by then I'd had a very numinous experience about midway through that year on the mushroom, where a white owl came to me in the journey and morphed into a woman and said to me, I am White Owl, I'm your medicine, and I will work with you, daughter who longs. And you, because I was in a very clingy space, and I was deep in my wound of abandonment. And she said, you will be birthed tonight from daughter who longs to daughter who knows. And so I had the most extraordinary mystical experience. And I wrote about that in my book, Love and Spirit Medicine, which chronicles my first year of what became monthly mushroom journeys while my marriage was ending. And then I got involved with my good friend, and it's a very raw, vulnerable book, but that was an extraordinary experience. And I realized I was in a soul training that year. But in order for me to get to the next level, I had to go into my own shadow place and face a lot of parts of myself. And, you know, that is ongoing. Shadow isn't just like, okay, I did it and I'm okay. You know, like I just recently had something happen where, you know, I had to, again, go into those depths of myself and, you know, delve more deeply and do some more work.
Sorry, Jason, to quickly emphasize, when you had that experience with the owl, goddess, lady, whatever, did that instantly heal you, or were you still in pain for a while? Was it a quick or slow healing from that?
Okay, that's a great question, because on one level, the work was done, but that was in the ethers, right? That was whatever, extra dimensionally, or shall we say, really in the depths of my psyche. Then the mushroom wears off and you're back. And now I have to implement it. And it took months after that to move from daughter who longs. And I would feel myself going into that. But by then, though, I was working with this white owl being, and I would defer to her. And I would say, how do I do this? I'm falling into daughter who longs. Please help me, white owl. And so she became my light and my guide and my guardian. And so, and that enabled me to move through, but it took probably another almost 2 years, to really fully integrate that. And so that's my spirit name, if you will. I'm not daughter who knows everything, but a knower is a seer.
The 18 months, 2 years thing seems to be very common from all the work and research I did back in the day in recovery from pathological individuals for my own books. It always came up 18 months to 2 years, regardless of what path they took on their recovery. It's almost like this, you hear them talking about how cells regenerate in a certain period of time in 2 years or whatever. It's almost like they have to regenerate a new version of themselves, literally down to the cellular level. I think that's probably what happens. That's why with this side, people even say, gosh, I hardly recognize you. You look like a new man, or you look like a new woman. You literally are a new person, I think. And that's why you don't get over trauma or pain quickly. It takes that, you literally have to regenerate yourself. And this is another problem with the kind of like modern approach, whether it be psychology or even the spiritual thing. Right, your healing begins today. It's like, it's not like that at all. There's no set timetable. And I think a lot of people can do tremendous damage of themselves if they don't, what's the word, acknowledge how damaged they are. I think it's so important before they enter into someone's work like mine or yours. I think that's definitely important. A lot of people aren't willing to acknowledge how damaged they are, or are frightened of it,
Yeah. Well, I always say that nature isn't instant coffee. And so, we're in a commercial culture, and it's all about selling you the next great thing, and this will work, or sign up for this weekend and you'll have this degree afterwards. And that's certainly not how we as individuals work. And we are individuals, and all you have to do is look at someone's astrological birth chart, and you see the complexity that goes into each individual person. You realize, okay, we're similar, but we're not the same. And you can have a family, 4 children, and they all have very different experiences of growing up in that home. And so it stands to reason, of course, that when we are on a healing journey, it could take 6 months, it could take 10 years. I mean, you just don't know. And but this is actually the piece I want to make clear with the mushroom too, because the mushroom's getting a lot of press right now, and it's this amazing panacea. And I'm a big fan. That said, it's not for everyone, and also, it's not instant coffee either. I mean, you can have a very challenging experience. And if you are not working with someone who can help you to interpret and go deeper into symbolism, the metaphor of what came through, that can be devastating. It can actually do more damage.
It's interesting about not for everyone, because I discovered that at a young age with LSD. Now, I have to say, it was in the music scene in Dublin, and we were taking the LSD recreationally, but also kind of creativity, in a creative kind of way as well. And it was fun. And I've never, ever had a bad trip ever, either on mushrooms or on LSD. I'm fortunate that way. I think the worst ever happened was I tried one day in Dublin when I was 18, I tried to order an ice cream from the side of an ambulance. That was like the worst of it. But I've never had a terrible experience. But my God, I know some guys who did, and they never got over it. Like, I often wonder, and here's a question for you. Was that, could past life trauma, I'm talking about the previous life trauma, enter into a psychedelic or shamanic process in this life on using something like entheogens?
I'm not going to say no. I myself had in that first year of monthly journeys, I had a journey where I was shedding what they told me were more than 5 centuries of persecution. And so it was like that movie Groundhog Day, like I was in those shackles constantly. And it was very, very real. I mean, it got me even to think, like, no one thinks about that. And it was like, they weren't made to fit. You grow boils under them, your skin would come up. Like they were torture devices. And so, yeah, that was extraordinary. And I sat up at one point and was feeling my neck, and I was in utter shock that there was no noose around my neck. So it was like letting go of all of this. And then at the end of that, I was told, I said, I have a gift, and this lifetime I'm not going to be punished for my gift. And so, yeah.
Almost like your daemon took over. What were you going to say, Jason?
I literally was about to say that. You've been saying exactly everything I've been wanting to say. We were talking to Anthony recently, and I was listening to one of his videos about when I think it was when they were doing some kind of whatever live brain scan of someone, and they were expecting, psilocybin mushrooms to make the brain like light up more, but in fact it was actually attenuating the brain signal. So it's as if like these entheogens, they attenuate the normal world around you, reduce that down so that these other frequency bands, if you want to call them that, these other reality constructs, that whether we share them together on a genetic entity level, like within the Celtic soul, or within the Slavic soul, or within the North African soul, whatever group it is, perhaps that's one of the frequency bands people tune into when they are attenuating this physical 5 sense reality around us. And I think that it's very possible with the past incarnation stuff that can be brought to the forefront. I've had experiences like that too. And but just that idea with attenuating the world around us. Shonagh, you were talking about speaking with other entities that come through, and I was wondering, is it possible that we can communicate with other disincarnate beings in that realm, but also be projecting parts of our own existence out into kind of a second person or a third person, like mocking up entities that are parts of ourselves, so we can deal with our own shit by seeing it as like a separate being teaching us, where sometimes the best teacher we need is right there in the mirror, but we need to literally see it coming at us from an exterior perspective, rather than just letting it sit all up here in the mind. So I was just curious what you might think about that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I've thought about that a lot. Now, I think the piece that I experienced with White Owl, so, if we're speaking in Jungian terms, there's the self, capital S, which is like the Godhead, if you will, and then the ego. So the self is sort of the unifying person, the unifying part of all of us. It's the whole, and then there's the ego, and the ego is sort of the center of the personality, if you will, so the first half of life. Now, this is not verbatim, but it sort of goes in and out. But we'd be more, or a baby is certainly sort of still in that kind of ultimate sort of whole state of wholeness, the self, and then gradually the ego develops and sort of individuates away from the self. And then in the second half of life, it's like the ego is seeking more of the self, if you will, the Godhead. It's like getting ready almost kind of to return home, if you will. And I do think to myself, that seems to me like the kind of experience where it's like you kind of meet the Godhead, if you will, the self. And that can be a deeply mystical and profound experience, or it can be absolutely devastating and terrifying. And I think was it Job who was tempted anyway, and God and I think Satan got together and they were going to tempt him, and Satan basically would represent that part that is going to lead him into the individuation process, and ultimately to have an experience we're talking about, how this sort of essentially these crises, difficulty, the darkness serves, right? Because you have that experience, and it actually serves to take you into a whole other level of being, that dark well serving. Okay, so back to within the great mystery of our psyche, I actually think, if these are aspects of myself, because I now, when I go in, I speak in iambic poetry. And so everything rhymes. It's perfect rhyme. And different beings come in and speak through. And they say they are the fairy, the elfin, the nature spirits. Now, this is in every tradition, in that you would have folk within the tradition who could communicate with the genus loci, the local spirits. And they could do that. Some, naturally just, could do it, go into kind of altered state on their own. Others would take, whether it was mushrooms or ayahuasca or something else. And certainly in ayahuasca, that is very obviously, they, call that the madre, that you're speaking with the grandmother. And it's felt, in my experience anyway, just the few that I had, very much like wasn't a part of me sort of projecting. And in fact, I fought her in my first experience. It was not good. But anyway, so no, I actually think that, again, this is, I've been so deeply into this thought of just like, this is such a profound mystery. And also everything's crumbling around us, right? Like the construct is crumbling. And so it's what is real? And I realize our reality is actually, that's right, being created for us. But ultimately what is real is you and me. Nature is the living. And in my study of law, public and private can't mix. So public is the commercial system, which everything's made up. It's construct. Private is the living. That's us, living men and women, nature. And so, anyway, that's a very interesting question. And I think in psychological terms, it would be thought of for sure, oh yes, those are projections and it's aspects of the self. And certainly in dream work, I find sort of the Jungian understanding of that you're the dreamer. So every part of that dream is an aspect of you. But then that begs the question, what are we?
I agree with you. It's both. It's sometimes a reflection of the self, but I've also had the other. Like when I told you about that mushroom trip 10 years ago when I met that Hindu goddess, that was not me. That was
right.
That was another being, right? A goddess, right? But I was talking to years ago. I was talking to this atheist chap at work, and he's very, very atheistic. He loved Richard Dawkins and all this, and he pulled the usual on me, and he said to me, "There's been 350,000 gods in humanity, and everyone thinks their god is correct, so they can't all be correct." And I said, but they can. And then I started to explain to him that, like, this concept, that the daemon, and it could be like a demonic reflection of what you're expecting to be in as your spirit guide, as your god, as your entity, whatever, guiding you. He couldn't even get his head around that. But yes, when people say there's 300,000 gods or a million gods and they can't all be right, well, they can all be right depending on the individual person who's in I don't know what the word to use, but spiraling that experience out and then back into them again, in that way. I think that's very plausible. And I know in my case, it definitely has happened. And the end of that movie, The Dark Song, where she conjures the Archangel Michael, that was definitely her that made that happen. And, and it was in order for her to learn to forgive and get over her own shit in life. But then you have the other, and the other is kind of ominous and frightening. I remember, like, any experience I had with kind of gods, and I've messed around a fair bit with chaos magic and stuff like that. I always feel I can tell a difference. There's a sense of oh wait, I've opened the door to something gigantic here, and I better be real careful. And that seems very, very different than the demonic reflection. You know what I'm saying? I think it's both. There is the self-generated one, but there's also the other. And people have to be I think people need to be very careful to distinguish between the two when they're doing their spiritual workings.
And when you're working with portals, like the mushroom is a portal. These substances are portals, and they can take you to most unfamiliar places. And I think also of like Thomas the Rhymer back in, I don't know what that was, 11th or 12th century, who swore up and down he'd been taken down to the place of the Elfin Queen. And then when he returned, he was speaking in rhyme, and he could prophesy. And I wonder if Thomas ate a couple of mushrooms. And there's many stories about being taken to these places of the she, if you will.
Sometimes it just takes the ingestion of spores.
Mm-hmm.
Stories in Irish folklore and European folklore, someone lying down in the damp grass on an autumn day and then finding themselves in the fairy world. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they don't even have to directly ingest them. I think the spores can be enough if they get enough of them in them. Mm. And they talk about this concept of the grass, a certain area of grass, the portal to the fairy world. Let's talk about that. We're a big fan of entities and fairies on this show. What are your feelings about that? Like, you've been here to Ireland, you visit these places and so on. Did you feel those energies?
Oh, yes. At times, very palpably, very, very palpably. And also in Scotland. And I was in Scotland probably over 5.5 years ago now. I went there with a small group. And we went to the Isle of Lewis, and we went to the stone circles there. And in the second stone circle there, I was standing in the center, and those places are very activating, as all these places are. I mean, they're geomagnetic hotspots, and I felt a tall male being next to me, and he put his hand out to me, and he was holding a golden orb, and he was giving it to me. And I reached out my hand and I took it and I put it into the center of my chest, into my heart center. And as soon as I did, I felt like I put a little device in there. But after that, I was pouring forth poetry. Thankfully, I brought a little digital recorder with me. I was pouring forth poetry, no mushrooms needed. At every site we went to, it was flowing through me. And then continued on the plane from Glasgow to Chicago for 7 hours. I channeled poetry. And then 2 days after I got home, I felt like, I think they came home with me. And for almost 3 months, I channeled all of this poetry, and I would have to bring my recorder to bed with me at night. And then it would come in as I was waking up in that kind of liminal state. The poetry would come in, and then I would just speak it into my recorder. So those places are very activating, and we don't really know for sure, what they were all about. I mean, I know you have done a lot of research into that, Thomas.
Yeah, what are you going to say, Jason?
I was going to ask her about Shonagh, with the you were talking about not needing the mushrooms to experience that. To me, and I've totally been there too as a composer. I get is we'll call it colloquially, my inner ear. I'll hear things and stuff, but with that, it almost seems we're talking about like living in this real world collectively, that there's definitely an agenda here, so that people don't ever look into those directions, so that people never tune in to the fairy realm, or tune into something other than this. I think you called it earlier the made up reality, the public reality you're talking about.
The construct.
The construct, right? And it's there just seems like there's a massive hex over the entire planet that's probably been here since I don't know how long, but it's been here a long time. And you look at the art, architecture, music, the arts of a century ago, and it's like, it seemed like pretty commonplace that architects and chefs and musicians had a greater ability to tune into those realms than the average Joe and Jane today. It takes them 2 hits of acid and or 5 dried grams, a heroic dose of mushrooms to get even enough to get a little bit of that demonic or fairy realm or whatever, the other, to experience that, where they could have it just sitting in a park with their friends. They could tune into it without needing the spores, without needing anything. They would just have that inspiration. So to me, I've kind of got this pet theory that, yeah, there is some kind of overlay that's on top of us collectively as a human race, not any one specific variation of the human race, but the entire genetic makeup of the human body. But there's some kind of overlay there to ensure that people don't go into the fairy realms, that they don't hear the daemon, that they don't speak to the gods and goddesses, that they don't do that. And there might be the one entity that people are allowed to have contact with, and that might be the very one mocking up this whole thing, potentially some kind of artificial intelligence. I think it was in one of your podcasts recently I was listening to about it. You were talking about the AI, I think.
Me, possibly.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that there's getting closer and mixed in with this AI, that there's some kind of construct there with that, right? Or am I thinking of something else?
Well, it's definitely running interference.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just thinking that, yeah, there's something could be there to that there is some kind of blanket on top of us.
There's no question.
Yeah.
No question. And when you spoke of the hex, I went, wait a minute, because the beings, as I call them, have said in so much of the poetic transmissions that have come through, they refer to it as an ancient spell. You will unbind. It's
Wow.
an ancient spell.
The thing is with that, the electromagnetic pollution has damaged a lot of disabilities in us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now this, and something you said earlier on then about you felt this entity put an implant in you, very similar to the alien abduction stories, which I believe are modern fairy stories, where they often put an implant into them. I think it's the same thing, and that sort of explosion of poetry out of you. That's a very common thing in Irish folklore, but music, hearing the music of the fairies. Some guys walking along the country lane one day and he hears the sound of a fiddle playing. And it's fairy music. In fact, music of Sligo is mostly called fairy music because it's supposed to derive from the fairy world. That's the irony of it. Before electromagnetic pollution, and you'll hear this in Ireland and other countries, they'll say, oh, when they built the power station in the valley, the fairies all left. When they built the dam, the silent dam in County Down, the Silent Valley is called the Silent Valley because they said this dam drove all the fairies away. Electromagnetic pollution is what's stopping us from communicating with these things, and why we need to tap into something to help us get there. And that includes trauma. Trauma can help us get there too. But, what was I going to say? I've had terrible experience at ancient sites as well. I had one particularly horrific experience in Sardinia and a megalith that was demonic in every sort of bad horror movie sense. So there's good and bad to these experiences as well. But our ancestors used to communicate with them without the need, because the electromagnetic pollution didn't interfere. And television and radio, when they were first developed, a lot of that was the spiritualists trying to talk to spirits. The irony was they were developing a technology that was stopping most people from talking to spirits, which makes me wonder if pathological entities on the other side were developing radio and television deliberately. This is where we're going to a whole other thing. Is there a war kind of in heaven? And when I say heaven, I mean a fairy world that's being reflected upon earth. This is extremely deep and fascinating stuff, I find. And I'd like to know what your feelings about that are.
It's interesting because I in a journey I had a few years ago, I said, my God, there's a war going on. And it's out there as it is down here. And I certainly think now we're in a war on nature and on our very biology, and this whole thing is electromagnetic. And in my mind, it appears that what they want is full governance of the very ethers, that the physical isn't enough. They want the whole kit and caboodle. And so, as I call them the beings, and they have said that we've spoken to your people, among the trees when you would meet and at certain times. And someone asked me today, I had an appointment with a session with a client who said, are they angry with us? And I, yes and no. I mean, the ones that I speak to, they love us dearly. And I said to her, look, if you and I can see that we're being conned, don't you think they can? They understand what we're in, they can see. But then, of course, just as there are many races of us, there are many races of these beings. And obviously there are some that are very upset and have receded, and you'd be hard pressed to connect with them.
In the National Gallery of Ireland, every year they used to have, when I lived in Dublin, every year they used to have a winter showing of watercolors that were very precious and locked up, mostly William Turner watercolors. They have a huge collection of Turner watercolors, but they were only displayed in winter, January, the darkest month, so they wouldn't be affected by light traditionally. Nowadays it doesn't matter, they have lights that can do, but they always traditionally unveil these watercolors in winter. And along with the Turner watercolors, they'll also have watercolors by other artists in the collection, of their vast collection of watercolors. And one year they had this painting called The Fairies March to War. And it was a beautiful watercolor, very, very highly detailed, by some Irish artist. I can't remember the name now. And it showed a fairy army marching to war. And they were dressed like what you expect. They were elvish, leprechaunish, the stereotypical folk costume of the fairies that come out of European folklore. They were going to fight in a battle a distant army who looked like the orcs from Lord of the Rings. They were a darker, malevolent thing. And you got the impression by looking at this watercolor that this artist was trying to convey that there are entities on our side who are fighting a battle against these orc type ones on the other side. And both sides are attempting to elicit the humans as allies in their own fight. So the sort of like the friendlier fairies are more honest with us. They give us poetry, they give us music. The other one deceive us through, they tell us, I'm your dead uncle, or I'm your, I found this, and it was one of these things, like, I was so affected by the painting that it was like, looking at it, it was like, that's it right there. The war in the other world is reflected in this world. And this is one of the things in the New Age thing. They're so quick to trust any voice that tells them what they're hearing. I always say the proof is in the pudding, over a long time. Oh, I heard a voice. It was someone, a Pleiadian from the planet so-and-so, who told me I was really special. This seems to be the giveaway of the dark side. The dark side ones come in and tell you, you're wonderful, you're special. Where I think they're more honest, the ones that are on our side are more likely to be tough love. They come in and say, you shouldn't have did that when you were 21. I think that's how you tell the bad ones from the good ones. The ones who give you the tough love are the good ones, and the ones who give you the, you're an astral goddess from the fifth dimension, they're the ones you want to be wary of.
Well, that would lead to ego inflation.
Yeah.
And back to when, Jason, you were talking about projections of yourself, I was thinking of that also, that one has to be careful when traversing these realms within theogens of getting like overly identified like that, because you get certain people coming out of the mushrooms thinking they're Jesus or whatever, right? And so I'm so grateful that I had, especially that work with Brew beforehand, because he spoke to that, and so I kind of knew that going in, and also a teacher that I worked with for a while, Tom Kenyon. He's a psychotherapist. He has a 4-octave voice. He's a musician. He's an acoustic brain researcher, and he's a channel. But I remember telling us how, these beings would ask him to do certain things, like, can you, sort of channel our sounds and create this thing? And he would always say, I'll think about it. I'll think about it. In other words, I don't care who you say you are. I'm in a body. I have an earth life here. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. In other words, not like immediately getting sort of down on his knees and, oh my goodness. And ultimately that's ego inflation, which I think is, really important to be aware of that also.
Terence McKenna's brother, what was his name again? I can't remember.
Dennis.
Years ago in a new radio interview, I heard him telling someone about the first American beatniks that went to the Amazon to try the ayahuasca. and they went down somewhere in Peru, and they went on the session, and they came out telling the locals that you won't believe what we saw. We met these reptilian aliens, and they told us that they had created the human race, and we were slaves to these aliens and this thing. And they said that the shamans were rolling around laughing, and they said to them, they're liars. The number one rule you learn in all this stuff is which ones are the liars, and the liars are the ones who tell you you're kind of special and you have a special message.
I didn't mean any insult there about the Shonagh, about the projection thing.
Oh, no, I didn't take it as an insult at all.
Okay.
No. This is fascinating.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I come from a little bit different spiritual background that's, I guess you could consider almost closer to Gnosticism, where my definition of ego and self are totally different than what most American or English. But I was just going to say, interestingly enough, just because of that, because the way that I kind of view existence, we'll call it existence, that you, me, Thomas, all of us here, we are a living being driving this body, so to speak. And what most people call the ego is what I think linguistically we all say, okay, well, that's the persona. And I'm putting it in my face here because it's what you have to work with. You know, we interact through our personas, and yeah, there's that part of ourself that we're projecting to everyone to see. But you, the being that's lived, you know, incarnation after incarnation throughout all history, you know, if time is an infinite thing, you know, you'll incarnate infinite amount of times. I'll incarnate, you know, our paths will cross. And that's what I meant by you, that being, and I'm making a sphere here in front of me that's gone from body to body, that doesn't have memory of, oh, I was this person, I was that person, because those are just identities. They're like masks that we can put on and take off. You know, this is a skin suit or a nervous system that we drive around like a car and we operate. So for me, there's that part of me that it sits below that level of awareness, you know, of the thinking mind, and it's there in genetic memory where, yeah, it might take a young person or someone just coming onto this journey. It might take a little bit of that entheogen if they're not schizophrenic by, you know, all that level of the Aldous Huxley scale of, okay, maybe they've got temporal lobe epilepsy, or their chronic migraine, where people they are naturally attenuated and can see into the fairy realm. Those other people who are not schizotyp, whatever, all that group of people, they might need a little bit of mushroom or a little bit of LSD to open up to see, oh, there's this entire other world that me as a being I've existed in before, and to see, yeah, there's part of you that's lived before, and it will show you through 3D mock-ups, the trips that we see, you know, the visualizations as you are a new, you know, a neophyte on the journey. I think you said in a recent podcast I was listening to, like house cleaning, housework, something about
housekeeping. Yeah. Newer
people on this journey. I'm 35 in this incarnation, and my first experience, you know, it was like I might still be in that housekeep or that you know, tuning things. Like I said, it's like a sound check. Before you get on the stage and play a show, you got to make sure all the levels are set. You know, so when you do encounter some big fucking demon, you know, you've got everything set. You've got if you're going into battle, you've got your sights on your rifle all tuned in. You know where the zero is. You know, everything is tuned in place yet. So that's all I was saying, that part of you that's incarnated many, many, many times, that's there on the subconscious or unconscious level. It might project itself out as a third person or a second person, even kind of thing. Before you have an opportunity, to meet gods, goddesses, and all that, because it might be there to protect you, so to speak, like a firewall that you have to do the training levels before, you know, you can go out there and do battle on the astral, so to speak. That's all I meant.
I was thinking of it in more psychologically, and so that's fascinating.
I think most of the.
Let's go there, Shonagh. How do you feel about reincarnation?
How do I feel about reincarnation? Well, I feel like we do. I feel like we do reincarnate, just because, again, like I just look at nature and I think of a tree, for instance, and the leaves come and they express and they're beautiful, and then they age, fall comes, and then the leaves fall. And then the tree does it all over again. It like reinvents itself again in the spring. And I don't know, for me, that speaks to me in that, you know, we yeah. And I think also the journey of the soul, that it would require many, God knows, infinite experiences in this sort of constant. I think the only constant is change. So yeah, that is my sense. And that, of course, there are people that we meet, other people with sort of, you know, there's no connection, and others there is a very instant connection, and you feel like, you know, there's something here that seems to have been here already.
I think that's one of the most plausible proofs of reincarnation, is when you meet someone and you feel like you knew them before. That's happened to me loads of times in my life, and that cannot be an accident. And there's also people, I think, funny, we were talking about that. I don't know, on one of these shows here, I was talking about an experience I had in New York out 1992, 3, and I was on the 7 train going uptown. And this Asian looking gentleman, young guy, perfectly normal, nothing wrong with the guy at all, dressed normally, acting normally, stands beside me on the 7 train, on the number 1 train going uptown. And I thought I was going to die. I felt like I was in the presence of the devil, that this was the most evil creature on the planet, in the form of a nice looking, respectable Asian guy. And I was trying to reconcile the two. Thinking about this more, I wonder, in a previous life, had he murdered me or something? And I picked that up on him in his new body. I often wondered if that's what happened there.
Okay, I will tell you that I sat once with a friend who took the mushroom, and she was deep in this journey. And at one point she said to me, "Oh my God, Shonagh, you were my wet nurse in Egypt," is what she told me. I nursed her babies for her in Egypt. And what was so weird about that was she'd had issues with her gut, and she was staying with me for a little bit. And I turned her on to raw milk kefir, which is a ferment and very, very good for the digestion. And then she has this journey and has that experience. So anyway, so yeah, that's very, very interesting.
Intense. Tell us about your retreat in Vermont and the work you're doing now, and what kind of people are going there, and what wonderful things you're achieving.
Well, I devised a model. You know, so let's see, how would I describe this? So there's so many people suffering, and the suffering really, you know, and suffering emotionally, psychologically. And in the work that I have been doing since my mid 40s, so whatever, 12 years now, you know, it began with working energetically on people, and it would always shift into conversation, and then that person sort of sharing with me things that were going on in their life. And so it would end up being a kind of therapy session. And this continued to the point where I just created, it was actually a client who I had in another state who asked, is there any way that I could come out there, work with you one-on-one, soak up your knowledge, you know, and just really sort of help me with this piece I'm working on. And I said, sure, okay. So she flew out and she came for 3 days, and we worked one-on-one. And then I mentioned it to a client the following week, and she said, well, I would like to do that. And I was like, really? You live in the same state as I do? She's like, no, I want to do that. So it morphed into this piece now where a person comes to my house on a Sunday afternoon. They stay here till Friday morning, and it is my work is it's very deep. It's very probing. So we go into the sort of shadow piece, but I also work with cards. I work with the I Ching. I'm very intuitive or psychic, and then the food plays a great role. And so it's a very, very rich, deep experience. And it's, my work right now is primarily word of mouth. I mean, or referral based.
What kind of cards do you work with?
I work with tarot. I love the tarot, and I have a deck that was gifted by Brew Joy, my late teacher, to all his students. It's the James Wanless Tarot, and he loved that because all the images are collage. And Brew said, "This is how the deep psyche speaks. It speaks through image." So, and what does that image evoke? And so I work with that deck and a couple of other decks. And then the I Ching, like I said, and runes, and just not so much to divine, but to cull from the psyche, because that person will do the cards and it will reveal what's going on in the deeper layers of that person. Like maybe that person pulls the Emperor card and it would occur to me, there's something going on with the father, or what's going on, like that's what it would evoke, and these deeper questions. And so they could pull just one card, and that could result in a conversation for a good hour or more, going into these deeper layers of sort of what happened in the past, what's going on now. And I see everything going on, sort of the stories of their life today, as simply symptomatic of something, a pattern that was struck earlier in their childhood. And so it's very deep and probing. And the thing is, you cannot accomplish this in a 55-minute therapy session once a week. You just can't. And so in this way, their ahas will happen, on our morning walk, or sitting on the sofa. Or I also have a labyrinth on my property. I have a 3-acre little farmhouse in rural Vermont. And I put in last year a stone labyrinth. It's 60 feet diameter. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful, very potent. So that's also a part of the experience. And so it is sort of psycho-spiritual therapy, if you will. Very, very rich.
What you were saying about the cards triggering symbols and emotions and sensations, there's so much truth to that. I think the images on the tarot, they because they're not alphanumeric, they can actually touch the core of a person in a way that, like words or numbers or even speech can't. Years ago, I was talking to a woman who was constantly getting the Ace of Wands card until she came into dealing with a date rape thing that happened to her when she was in college. The card kept constantly coming up in readings. And it took her for the longest time to make her realize that that's what that was. It was the phallic symbol in a negative sense of that. But that shows the power of the subconscious mind to target a certain image. It's absolutely, it's absolutely fantastic how a certain image or motif or logo or design can grab you, and you're going, why am I saying that? Why am I saying that? Why am I saying that? It's because your subconscious mind is screaming to you, this is the key to the lexicon of your healing or whatever, or your transformation.
Right. But we, at this time in history, are symbolically illiterate, the common folk. So
and
we
yet,
don't.
And yet we're surrounded by visual stimuli,
Yeah.
nonstop, and we're symbolically dumb. Yeah.
And meanwhile, I see that the mystery is speaking to us 24/7, constantly. But really, we're in a culture where it's nothing to see over here, folks. Back to work, everybody. Back to work. Back to the quote unquote real world, which is the construct.
That's why it makes its way into things like The Simpsons and stuff like that, and TV shows and movies. That's why it makes its way in there. You look at so many things have been predicted by The Simpsons. They have, because those artists who are drawing those cartoons are somehow being channeled to tell the world something that they need to know about themselves, whether it was 9/11 or lots of other things have been on The Simpsons. It's remarkable how much, it's almost to the point, it's a certain period of The Simpsons, it was almost like a shamanistic thing. It's the subconscious mind at the collective unconscious is using whatever it can to scream at us to pay attention to something. I find that incredible, actually, all that stuff.
And it's like you were talking about with the construct and everything. It's like they've done we were talking about, that all the symbolism being gone, and they've made this whole construct over probably the last century with the media and everything. But it's like all the artists that make that construct, all the people, all the working class people that are in there as the animators and the geniuses behind it, can't help but leak out the symbolism and leak out, mythology, a new mythology into it in kind of a chaos magic way, where it's like, yep, even though they've made the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all that bullshit, there are still leaks, within the Simpsons, and still things that are bubbling up out of the collective unconscious, so that there still is a modern symbolism here for people, despite how much they try to, make it so that the only thing people have is the Kardashians and the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all of that. But there's still, beneath all of that, those artists and filmmakers bring symbolism in out of the collective unconscious.
Yeah, because the collective unconscious is bigger than the Hollywood bullshit.
Right.
I mean, when you see things like how the Lord of the Rings series of movies has so deeply touched people, and then you find that the Two Towers was being made at the time the Twin Towers was collapsing, and during the filming of the Two Towers, they were watching the Two Towers coming down in Manhattan. You couldn't make this stuff up. You just couldn't, because it's happening for a reason. And just whatever the forces behind the veil knew that these films were going to have a tremendous impact on people's lives. Going forward, almost like they brought the folkish aspects of life back to us, brought fairy tales back, and they were literally, the daemon was actually literally there beside what's his name, Peter Jackson, writing these scenes. It's incredible, and that's where the subconscious, the collective unconscious, is a louder force than all the dickheads in Hollywood put together. It'll use them, and they won't even know it.
Because they never take, the people behind all of it never take into consideration, that we're all living beings. The human element to them is just such a foreign thing. They get to a point and they're going, what? Why did it go this way? Because they don't understand living beings.
Thomas, you mentioned Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and sometimes I wonder if that was a documentary.
It's amazing. We're looking at it right now.
Yeah, we're in it.
Yeah, it was like, well, it was like Rosemary Ellen Guiley in her books spoke about how science fiction and fantasy writers have this shamanic ability to see the future. Uncanny. And where are they making it real? But it's like those films couldn't be made now because they'd be so woke and so cooked, they'd be stupid, and that kind of thing. They were made at just the right time, so they will last forever. So they couldn't put any PC, politically correct cultural Marxist bullshit into them. They were very pure in their own kind of way, although they're identical to the books. They couldn't have been done now. It was almost like the collective unconscious saying, "Okay, guys, here's one more round of art to keep you going until a new form of art comes along." And that's why I think they are predictive movies in many ways. You're right about that, Shonagh, and no doubt about it.
Yeah. And I also want to tell you that when you're asking me about a war in the fairy worlds, that has also been referenced in the transmissions that I've received. One of them saying something like, many minds on this one. I don't remember exactly what the exact words, but saying that there are many races participating on this, and particularly I went in. I only go when I'm called into the realms, and I went in early May, and I just took a couple of grams. I didn't expect to go as deep as I did, but I did. And yeah, that was referenced towards the end. And I also had the fates come in, and it was difficult because it's going to be difficult. I think obviously it is, what we're in, but they were saying essentially this is, a challenging birth, but there was reference to, that there are many have sort of conspired to shift us out of the high challenge that we're in. But there's definitely, an effort on both sides. It's very clear.
That's why I've been telling people, they say to me, like, how can you sum up the world today? I say, look at the opening of the Fellowship of the Rings. Just the opening scene. Go and look at that on YouTube. Galadriel talking about I can feel it in the water. There's a shadow moving. And, the one ring is the artificial technology. It's the AI. It's the ability to... That's what the one ring is. in our modern terms. And the hobbits and Frodo and the Fellowship are people like us who are trying to say, maintain our humanity. Sauron is the AI, is the machine, this demonic entity that's taken over all these technocrats who want to turn us into robots. And I really do feel that. I mean, that's, you know, it's the small, you know, it's like the small, we're waiting on the small fate will ultimately save us from this. Just like it, you know, so when Smeagol found the ring and under the river, when we found the one ring and started that series of events. It might have already started already, but I always say to people, like you just said, if you want to know what the world is today, watch the opening of the Fellowship of the Rings, that first 5 or 6 minutes, and it's all there. And that's why Joseph Campbell and Jung and all their work, and James Joyce, and their work is so important because of the monomyth, and it shows us that like mythology is actually the truth. It's actually the living script of what we're experiencing.
Would it be okay if I shared a little bit of the transmission from this most recent mushroom journey? Is there time?
We would be honored.
Okay. Let me just find it here. Let's see where to start. So I was speaking with the fairy queen. Now, I love these beings and I don't take this lightly. You know, this is my practice and I feel deeply, deeply humbled always when they come in, and they're so incredibly kind and wise. And so, gosh, there's so much here. Hang on. Let's see. Well, where shall I start? Okay, so I have a little arthritis in my hands. It's actually gotten much better, but I'll just start here. I asked, what of my body can you say? Will this arthritis go away? What will be the very best? I am here at your behest. Good ones wise, tell me today. I will listen to the Fae. And she said, yes, your hands are very cold. You need more blood there, daughter bold. Use the beings to help you well. And that water from your well, run it through the filters there, then charge it, daughter, well with care. We are teaching you old things. People of the fairy rings bring you to the ancient magic. Keep away from all that tragic, all the nonsense that they say. Daughter, you must stay away. We, the old ones of this earth, called you here now for this birth. It's a big one, you won't miss it. Yes, this good earth, you will kiss it. It ensures you've everything, including those golden rings. Daughter who savors all life's gifts, we will deliver you a lift. Playing with words, as you know, these are the seeds we like to sow. And so, dear daughter who knows, your life here will shine and glow. You see, this is a frequency, and this one keeps your good mind free. That's the zone that we do keep, though the many are asleep. The waking ones will take the reins. They will break free from their chains. This an old spell you will break. Those who've cast it will forsake. An abuse of knowledge old. They've taken the stories told and twist and turned them into poison, making messes, lots of noise, and harnessing the power of mind. That is what they get to bind. And so we call to all who think, the open-eyed ones who don't drink from that river that is poisoned. No, good daughter, we are poised though, here and waiting for the call. And when it comes, then one and all will awaken from this spell that has made this good place hell. You, good daughter, wish to know when, old friends, will those seeds grow? We tell you, daughter, this is new. This age is a different brew. We who tend your cauldron old, daughter, our hearts are not cold. We breathe into you wisdom, dear, helping you the path to clear. They are felling all the trees. They are killing many bees. A good mess they are making here. Daughter, they're in a lot of fear, trying to protect themselves, and now they were laughing, from the beings you call elves. Dear, the keepers of the ages, we, the ones you call the sages, we're entrusted with this place. And though they are a different race, they don't understand this place. They will leave here in disgrace. Part of you, dear, knows that's true. So your good heart we imbue. Let the fear and worry go. And just like the water flows, let the wisdom carry you to a place where hearts are true. Daughter, you are right there now with your ladies learning how, turning minds into good flowers away from the ones that sour. Daughter, we will bring the showers, your spring will bear many flowers. And I said, this good body is here still next to the well of your goodwill. And now I'll preface this by saying I've been planting all these herbs in my garden. And so she said, give it rest, my body, and also herbs, roadside ones found by the curbs. Nettles are a gracious friend. 'Twill give you strength till very end. Yes, you've planted all those seeds. They'll deliver you good deeds. What most people consider weeds will carry you like noble steeds. The good weeds bow, saluting you. We will take care of the few aches and pains that now plague you. We can eradicate those few. Keep planting, daughter. Drop those seeds. They will tend to all your needs, making sure you plant the ones that will deliver the good fun. Comfrey calls you, it will heal. Daughter, put it where you kneel, on those knees and aching hands. Wrap it round you like a band. Those good leaves know what to do. They will dim what does abuse. And of course, those blessed bees, with their sting, dear, they will free all the medicine they hold. You partake of it, daughter bold. You will steward them with care, the good folk who fly in the air. You love to watch them fly and land, and in return they lend their hand. An ancient innocence they hold. It's in you as well, daughter bold. You are waking from the spell. We will keep your body well. You will come up in your mind with the answer to unbind the evil ruse you must unwind. We'll help you the way to find. You want a world of grace and beauty? Kindness is your only duty. And I said, wait a minute, are you telling me we must be kind? They are destroying us. Please, nature spirits, what to do? And she said, they have turned the common flu into a thing of mass destruction. They do this by spells induction. And I said, right, so how do we defeat the spell? Not to be impatient, but please tell. And she said, so many good folk caught in net, the consequence when one forgets. It's the nature of the spider. She devours what sits beside her. And you see, they've copied even her. And look at that, made quite a stir. They've got so many in their net. The sticky one makes you forget. But their nectar isn't sweet, it's the trick and not the treat. You see, when minds get steered away and they forget how to play and instead become the prey, those predators don't go away. Once again, a lesson large. This one, dears, for those in charge. They're about to eat their words, all those spells that you have heard. We assure you, this birth shall be. It will cleanse the earth and sea. Your good folk will be well. In the end, they'll live to tell. And then the fates came in and said, though you fear, oh daughter, we tell you once again, connect to us and let the forces drain the pus. It's not pretty, dear, we know. And we feel your heart's sorrow. We, the fates, have made our choice. And daughter, you will have a voice. The death comes first, and then the birth. That is how it is on earth. Do not worry, daughter dear, as you cry all of those tears. This is what it is to see. But it is how we have to free. Let that virus have its way. It will only last a day. In time, this is nothing, dear. You can see, your eyes are clear. We see you holding to the beauty. It's what you do, it is your duty. More will join you, they will come, awakening with the bright sun. Daughter, you chose Sunday to speak of light. I was going to teach my women in my school about the power of the sun. Daughter, this is our delight to see you rise to the command to make your stand on this good land. And with our gentle, loving hand, we'll love our queen and lend our hand. We do see your gentle heart And good daughter, we impart rhyme and reason to your mind. We've ensured that you will find your way through their awful spell, and you create, dear, very well. The well of wisdom waters deep. That well, daughter, very deep. Those waters will not make you sleep. A cauldron's brew must gently steep, so let it simmer till it boils. You will tend with your good toil. You see, dear, it's your energy. More and more will come to see, and that good light will come to be. And as it shines, dear, you'll be free. So let the boil drain its pus, so healing can come to all of us. The cause of it will be revealed, and daughter, their fate will be sealed. This we promise, don't you worry. You have observed they're in a hurry. It's too late for them to run. Many races of the sun have conspired on this one, and we will have a little fun.
Wow. I have chills listening to that. It almost like unleashed ancestral memories in me. I could have been hearing that in Anglo-Saxon or Old Norse or Old Irish, the bardic quality of it, and also the synchronicity. I've been talking a lot, Jason, about nettles have been really a big thing in our consciousness lately.
I'm drinking it right now.
Yeah, the nettle seems to be a power plant at the moment that seems to be moving. And I've noticed this year the nettles are huge and they're growing much more abundant than ever. So like as soon as you said the nettles, and then that in relation to the common flu being weaponized by black magic into a hex. This is all the things we've been talking about lately. But so can you mention the nettle? The nettle seems to be the power totem plant of the moment. Absolutely. Why? It makes perfect sense. The virus, the whole thing. I mean, I felt like I was listening to Beowulf or something then, because they would have been done. It was done the same way, for the same reasons. That was fantastic. I could hear an Anglo-Saxon harp being plugged in the background while you were doing that.
Oh,
absolutely enchanting, and I wish you could see some of my dream journals and all the spider web symbolism that I've been sketching out and everything. I'm like, she's talking about the same stuff that I'm having dreams about right now, about the duplicating the spiders technology and the web and the internet and all of that stuff. So just same things I've been dreaming about.
Yeah, of course.
Before you go, Shonagh, and there was a kind of a, would you like to say anything else? Would you, something? I would like you to continue what you were just saying in that bardic verse. There's a lot of people are really down on the whole lockdown and the whole bullshit pandemic and everything. What advice would you give people to sort of hold on and wait? This is a process that is not eternal, and we will win.
Okay, the first thing I'll say is I am not going down on my knees. I am not. And so it's all doom and gloom, fear, 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 death, death, death. Fuck that. No way. I am embracing life. I planted 12 fruit trees and I have a garden and I have bees and I am embracing life. I'm embracing nature. I'm embracing beauty. And I am doing my work and I am focusing on my creativity, because all of that gets shut down when people are in that fear porn. I don't own a television. I don't listen to the radio. I'm not on any social media. It's all mind control, propagandist nonsense. And it's like they said in that don't listen to that, dear. Focus on what you are creating. Let's create a beauty and let nature be our teacher. Yeah. And so, and we are, we're very hardy people ultimately, and we've been on this planet a very, very long time. And also I see, two systems, if you will. There's the construct, which is, kind of a dead thing. And then there is the living system of nature. And she has a cure for absolutely everything. She has an answer to all our questions. And then these beautiful spirits that have been guiding my life impeccably. And so I say, turn your attention away from the talking heads of doom and gloom and turn towards nature, which is, our birthright is to be on this I love this planet. it's a beautiful, beautiful place to be, and also to find the others, if you will. I'm not sure if that was Terence McKenna or Lorenzo.
It was Terence McKenna, yeah.
Yeah, find the others, and this is the last thing they want, is for us to sort of re-tribe, and I think this is what we're doing. We're re-tribing.
Well, I've been pushing the tribe and the parallel reality and attenuating one's consciousness in the direction we need rather than what they're giving us. And yeah, word up, everything you said there, sister, bang on. It's what we've all been talking about, and it's beautiful to hear. Your website will be up all along the bottom of this whole show, so
thank you.
They'll find, and it's a beautiful looking website too. I was very impressed. I felt very insecure looking at my website after seeing yours. But, ego consciousness, whatever. Anything else you want to? Any books or anything you have coming out, or anything like you want to tell us?
I'm working on my next book, which is called The Mushroom's Apprentice. But I do have courses on my website. So there's 3 of them that are really wonderful and helpful. And so there's that. And then I have a book of all my poetry called Poetic Whispers from the Green Realms. And I sell all that. It's a PDF. It's on my website. So
brilliant. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Jason?
No, this was just absolutely wonderful, and I'm so captivated by that last musing there. As Thomas put it, that real bardic magic there. It's incredible.
Thank you, Jason. It's so good to meet you. I so enjoyed this.
Likewise.
So thank you again, Shonagh, and when your book comes out, be sure to come back to our humble abode and say hello and tell us about it. And everyone else, see you next time on BR313 Symposium. What was that rhyme you came up with, Jason?
This is interesting. I got to rattle for a second before it comes back. Shonagh, you were talking about things rhyming, and I'm pulling up this message here because I sent it out earlier, but you were talking about things coming through as a rhyme. And literally, as I was preparing for this show, I had a rhyme come to me, and it was, we have the opportunity to become who we always dreamed of becoming, working with Beyond Room 313. No, that's not it. Hold on. I wrote it down again. We can edit it. We can edit this in properly.
You become who you're meant to be in room 313, Beyond Room 313.
You can become who you always wanted to be in Beyond Room 313.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks again, Shonagh. Thanks again, Jason. Good night.